What is relevant are the children. What are we going to do about the children?
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Hey, it's Janelle Waz, and welcome back to another episode of Treknalysis. Now, I've been talking a lot of TNG on Treknalysis lately, and don't get me wrong, it's a great show and I love it. But it's called Treknalysis, not TNG-nalysis, so let's talk some DS9 for a change. Cardassians. Now, Cardassians is a pretty good episode. Heck, it's so good I put it in my top 10 DS9 episodes list. It's not an episode with a whole lot of action. Heck, a single fight doesn't even break out in it. But it's filled with political intrigue, world building for the Cardassians, and plenty of knowing looks from the plain simple Taylor himself. Seriously though, I hope Andrew Robinson got a nice bonus in his paycheck for those eyes. Today, we're keeping up with the Cardassians, with DS9 Season 2's Cardassians.
And there is a game being played right now as we speak, isn't there?
There are always games, Doctor.
But before I go further, make sure you subscribe to my channel. I talk a lot about Star Trek, video games, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And if you'd like to help support the channel, consider becoming a member. Be great to have you aboard. The scene is set on the Replimat, the place on DS9 to go for food when you don't feel like paying Quark with money that the Federation doesn't give you.
I'm human. I don't have any money.
Dr. Julian Bashir finds Garak, DS9's plain simple tailor, enjoying a glass of juice to calm his nerves after dealing with a rather unruly customer.
You know, I've always wondered about that, about who your steady customers really are. I can't imagine Bajorans frequenting a shop run by a Cardassian.
Actually, that's an excellent point. Sure, DS9 is a hub of all sorts of people who want access to the wormhole, but it also has a lot of Bajorans who still resent the Cardassians for the 60-year occupation of Bajor. Heck, Kira was hounding one of them just last season, and even though she accepted that he was a good man by the end of the episode, he still got stabbed on the promenade. Not to mention that it's rumored that Garak was a spy and probably did some really shady things during the occupation. Heck, Julian in this conversation intimates that Garak is still a spy. Just who is keeping Garak in business? During this tete-a-tete, a Bajoran man and a Cardassian boy arrive on the station and are greeted with stares, including from the Stairmaster himself, Garak.
But I couldn't help noticing what a handsome young man you have here.
Okay, we have to talk about this. That was perhaps the worst way to approach a strange child. Not only did Garak deliver his introduction in perhaps the creepiest way possible, but putting his hand on the kid's shoulder? This is not a recipe for a good introduction, and earned him a look from the father that says he's thinking about taking care of this problem. Permanently. Look, I love Garak and all, but he kinda deserves what he's about to get.
Another unsatisfied customer?
So who bit Garak? Well, his name is Rugal, one of the Cardassian war orphans left behind after the Cardassians withdrew from Bajor, later adopted by Bajoran parents and raised as a Bajoran. Other than that, he's pretty ordinary. He and his father are just regular people. Which is why it's kinda odd that Dukat's suddenly taking an interest in this simple hand-biting case. Yes, it's not lost on me that I said Rugal was pretty ordinary and yet bit Garak's hand. Dukat's interest is the war orphans. It's a disgrace. These kids are being taught to hate their own kind, and he's on a crusade to bring these orphans back home to Cardassia.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Then why would this boy attack poor Garak? An amiable fellow, if ever there was one.
Oh, this'll age beautifully as the show goes on. Let's look into the future for a moment, shall we?
She's much too busy trying to save this station to be impressed with your incessant posturing.
Garak! Looks like you'll be hemming women's dresses for the rest of your life.
Now, why don't you go back to your little tailor shop and sew something?
You do have a lovely daughter. She must take after her mother.
Dukat wants Sisko to look into the incident, and he and Julian talk to Rugal's Bajoran father, who's apparently named Praka McDowell, but his name's only said once, and if you blink, you'll miss it.
And the Bajoran who adopted him was named Praka McDowell.
Cardassian should have minded his own business.
Garak was only trying to be friendly.
No, Julian. Being friendly is going up and saying hello. Garak introduced himself in the creepiest way possible. You don't take on a creepy tone, and you don't put your hand on a strange person's shoulder, especially one that gave you a dirty look from the get-go. Rugal's parents adopted him and raised him as their own, feeling that he shouldn't have to suffer for the actions of other Cardassians. Admittedly, though, they told Rugal what the Cardassians did during the occupation, and Praka won't apologize for that. But Rugal's their son, and they love him.
He isn't Cardassian. He's Bajoran. And we love him, just as if he was our own flesh and blood.
Which, of course, gets blown apart when a business associate of Praka's claims that Praka and his wife abused Rugal as revenge on Cardassians. So Rugal's going to stay with the O'Briens for a while. Wait, just like that? No proof, without talking to the kid, without a medical examination? Heck, without getting a decent Betazoid worth their salt to read his thoughts? Just take the kid away over some unfounded accusation. And why isn't Odo investigating this? He is chief of security. I'm sure Odo could look at Praka and Rugal and tell if Rugal is being abused or not in the span of an afternoon. This is kind of messed up.
Order a man to hand this child over to the state. Not while I'm his captain.
Meanwhile, in the infirmary, Julian is updating Garak on the latest Rugal news. Which seems like a breach of confidentiality because even though Rugal bit Garak's hand, he's not involved in Dukat's campaign to bring war orphans home.
I beg your pardon?
Gul Dukat.
Suffice to say that Dukat's involvement in a simple hand-biting case took Garak by surprise. He's on a mission to bring the war orphans back to Cardassia. Won't someone think of the children?
No, stop. Think of the children.
Oh, and Dukat is awfully concerned about Garak being attacked.
You never mentioned you were friends.
I should have executed you years ago.
Oh, you tried. Remember?
Garak starts asking Julian questions to get him thinking. Did the Cardassians, known for their attention to detail and their extensive record keeping, forget about the orphans? Who do you think was in charge of bringing them home? Which prompts Julian to butt into a call Sisko is having with Dukat.
I did not choose to leave them behind. I was ordered to leave them behind.
You hear that? The Cardassian war orphans is what Dukat left behind. Basically, Sisko and Dukat were discussing Rugal and how the Cardassians won't take it kindly if Rugal isn't sent home to Cardassia, a rather delicate diplomatic situation. And that's when Julian decides to start grilling Dukat over the finer points of Cardassian social studies. Until Dukat bails on the conversation. Julian is convinced Dukat is lying. However, he's only basing this on Garak's innuendos and nothing really concrete. Which probably both annoys and amuses Sisko.
Don't apologize. It's been the high point of my day. Don't do it again.
Meanwhile, Miles, the hero of Setlik 3 O'Brien, who fought the Cardassians in battle and witnessed firsthand what the Cardassians are capable of, comes home after a long day to find a Cardassian boy playing a Game Boy on his couch. Yeah, are we sure the O'Brien residence was the best place to send Rugal? Not that I think Miles would do anything, but it certainly would make an already uncomfortable situation even more so.
Gentle was bred out of these Cardassians a long time ago.
That was a very ugly thing you just said.
See? Now, this exchange between Miles and Keiko does touch on a recurring theme. Rugal is a Cardassian, and suffice to say, there are still bad feelings between the Bajorans, and some humans, and the Cardassians. While those feelings are understandable considering what the Cardassians were up to over the past 60 years, Rugal isn't responsible for crimes he didn't commit. In fact, he's also a victim of bad Cardassian policy, and people do take pity on him because of that. It's why he was adopted by Praka and his wife. while you can understand why Miles feels the way he does, especially considering that Rugal bit Garak's hand earlier that day, Keiko was right in calling him out because Rugal really didn't deserve that. Yes, I'm giving Keiko credit here. I can give credit where credit is due. But anyways, it soups on at the O'Brien residence, and Keiko decides to whip up fresh from the replicator Cardassian food.
It's a stew made with Cardassian zabu meat.
Keiko continuing her tradition of making Miles miserable through food.
Kelp buds, plankton loaf, and sea berries. It's very healthy.
Can't the man enjoy his favorite foods? No wonder he spends all his time hanging out at Quark's with Julian.
I thought Rugal might enjoy a dish that's popular on his own world.
Keiko, I can't believe I just got done complimenting you. Do you know how asinine that is? Where do I even begin? 1. Rugal was brought up as a Bajoran. He's not exactly thrilled about Cardassians at the moment, so pushing something very Cardassian at him is probably more insulting than anything else. And 2, being brought up as a Bajoran, Rugal is used to eating Bajoran food. I mean, I'm American with some Norwegian ancestry, but I wouldn't touch lutefisk if you paid me. It's a strange food that sounds thoroughly unappetizing to me.
I ate the lutefisk.
So why would you think Rugal would like zabu meat other than he happens to be Cardassian? Heck, you would probably be better off replicating, well,
Kelp buds, plankton loaf, and sea berries.
That being said, this terrible, terrible dinner might not have been in vain after all. Later that night, Rugal can't sleep and neither can Miles. Probably digesting that zabu meat. Rugal opens up to Miles. He wants to go home, but not to Cardassia, to the only home he's ever known, Bajor. He also sees something wrong with being a Cardassian, but also recognizes that he was born that way and it's not his fault. His parents love him and certainly haven't mistreated him. Heck, he never even got spanked.
Come on. Even I got my bottom whacked by my dad once or twice.
Not me.
And why didn't this conversation happen hours ago before taking Rugal away from his father? We could have avoided a lot of heartache here. Heck, you could argue that Rugal has no reason to lie, considering his father isn't even in the room to influence his answer. The only reason he was taken away from his father was because of an accusation which is looking more and more false.
Just because there was no sabotage doesn't mean there isn't a conspiracy on this ship.
What do you think of Cardassians?
Me? But who I choose to spend my free time with. That's my business.
You don't care for the Cardassians?
I like them fine. You learn to watch your back when you're around those people. It's not you I hate, Cardassian. I hate what I became. Because of you. Well, I can't say, really.
Why not?
Miles does hand out some sage advice, though. You can't hate an entire people. He's met some Cardassians he didn't like, but he also met some he did like. Like that guy he had a pint with in 10 Forward on the Enterprise while he delved into war stories. And Rugal, of course. They have a bond over hating Keiko's food. Rugal also mentions how he had a test on the Cardassian occupation in school about the atrocities they committed. Yeah, you can't even argue that his parents shouldn't have mentioned the occupation to him, because he was going to find out eventually.
I wish I wasn't Cardassian.
You do have to feel bad for Rugal. Even though his parents do love him and treat him as their own, he can't ignore the fact that he's a Cardassian since it's inevitably brought up, and it's not his fault for what other people who happen to look like him have done. Meanwhile, at 3 a.m., get in, loser. We're going to Bajor. And since one interruption deserves another, Julian wakes up Sisko in his stylin' jammies to ask for a runabout. Only for Dukat to interrupt them with a lovely 3 a.m. call. He does have a habit of that. And what was the urgent news? They found Rugal's biological father. And this couldn't wait until morning? Rugal's biological father is Khotan Padar, a prominent politician who was stationed on Bajor during the occupation, and he's on his way to the station to reclaim his son. Rugal, however, doesn't want to go back to Cardassia, but Dukat insists he go home to his father because, what, he wants to go back to those brutal people?
I can't find any evidence to support that accusation. I can't even find the man who made it in the first place.
Oh, okay. So a guy can just make an unfounded accusation, disappear, and the accused still gets his kid taken away from him. What the hell even is this legal system? Well, clearly something's going on here, so Sisko's on board with Julian and Garak's excellent Bajoran adventure, which takes them to a Bajoran orphanage where Garak fixes the computer and exchanges some snide remarks with a volunteer.
I was in the underground. Really? Perhaps we have met.
Weirdly enough, Rugal's name and the details of his adoption aren't in the files, so Garak just decides to swipe all the records for further study. Which should be a little concerning that he could do that so easily. You know, being a plain, simple tailor and all.
Excuse me, sir? Have you come to take us back to Cardassia?
I'm afraid not, child.
The episode does present the war orphans issue as a legitimate issue. Heck, Garak even admits that children without parents have no place in Cardassian society. So Cardassia abandoning its children is a pretty big deal. It's just that Dukat is clearly hijacking it for his own purposes.
Oh, won't somebody please think of the children?
Also, this girl reminds me of Toraziel, Dukat's illegitimate daughter, and I just felt like I had to point that out. Julian's had enough of Garak's implications and innuendos, and demands he tell him what the hell is going on.
So you're gonna tell me what's going on inside that plain and simple head of yours, my Cardassian friend, or we're gonna sit here until we rot?
You know, I know early Julian gets some flack from fans, but that was pretty awesome. It turns out that Padar was involved in the decision to withdraw from Bajor, meaning that because of him, Dukat lost his job as prefect. And isn't it awfully interesting that Dukat suddenly took an interest in an orphan boy who just happened to be Padar's long-lost son? It's just all so very coincidental.
I believe in coincidences. Coincidences happen every day, but I don't trust coincidences.
Padar arrives on the station and talks with O'Brien about Rugal. He's happy to get his son back and expects everything to go smoothly. He'll just accept him and willingly move back to Cardassia to be with his family.
I wish I wasn't Cardassian. I want to go home. No, I mean home. To Bajor.
Now, something that DS9 does well is expand upon pre-existing Star Trek aliens. The Bajorans, the Ferengi, the Klingons, and the Cardassians are no exception. Family is extremely important in Cardassian society. How they care for both their children and parents with the same level of devotion. Losing Rugal hit Padar hard, but finding him again is bittersweet. Obviously, he's happy that his son is alive, but he also feels that he failed in his responsibilities to his family by abandoning Rugal and allowing him to be raised by Bajorans, disgracing everything a Cardassian believes in.
Family is everything, and I have failed in my responsibility to my family.
While I feel for Praka, who raised and loved Rugal for the past 8 years, I can't help but see Padar as a sympathetic character as well. It ends up being a really shitty situation for everyone involved, and either outcome in this case is gonna suck. But even less than thrilled about all this is Rugal about to meet his biological father.
You are not my father! And I will never go back to Cardassia. Never.
I'm going to sleep this off. Please let me know if there's some other way we can screw up tonight.
You know, they probably should have gotten a counselor to help with this initial meeting. Okay, not Troy, but a trained professional counselor, and not Keiko O'Brien, the botanist who fell into teaching less than a year ago.
You know, I've never actually been a teacher, Commander, but it's something I've always thought about doing.
Well, suffice to say, this isn't gonna get resolved easily, so both Praka and Padar agree to Sisko arbitrating the custody case for Rugal, Ben being a father and all.
I thought you might be interested to know Dukat has just arrived on the station.
What, is Cisco's office bugged or something? How does Dukat keep getting live updates over this custody hearing? Cisco's pretty sure they're all being manipulated, considering Padar is Dukat's political enemy, and if this were to get out, he would be disgraced. But Dukat insists he's here for the children.
I like to think I'm here representing the children. What are we going to do about the children? I suggest we return to the issue of the children.
Won't somebody please think of the children?
Meanwhile, Julian and Garak are looking further into Rugal's files, or lack thereof. In fact, Garak's convinced that Dukat probably erased his file, but he manages to get a hold of the woman who wrote the file, who reveals that Rugal was dropped off at the orphanage as opposed to just being found, and that the person who dropped him off was attached to Terok Nor. What is Terok Nor exactly? Keep watching. Also, we need to take a moment to appreciate Garak's all-knowing smile here.
Meanwhile,
what's the first thing you do remember?
My father teaching me how to swim.
See? Does this look like an abusive relationship? Why are we even here? This started off as a case of stranger danger gone awry, and now it's a full-blown custody battle. Frankly, it shouldn't have even gotten this far. The accusation was unfounded, and the guy who made it disappeared, and it all could have been resolved with a quick talk with a counselor, and Dukat would just be twiddling his thumbs in his office. Suddenly, Julian and Garak burst into the hearing with new questions for a mildly worried Dukat as a mildly annoyed Cisco takes a seat. Julian points out that the publicity behind Rugal's case would be the end of Padar's political career, which, coincidentally, comes at the same time as an investigation into an attempted coup on Bajor, which Gul Dukat is a key witness. Yeah, Dukat's dirty little fingerprints are all over this case.
This is irrelevant and insulting. Commander, you've lost control here.
Yes, it seems that I have.
And here's where Julian really nails Dukat with all the evidence he's accumulated, while Garak looks on completely amused as Dukat's humiliated. The file deletion, the timing, the fact that Rugal was brought in, probably to use against Padar later on, and the final nail in the coffin? The officer who brought Rugal in was attached to Terok Nor, or, in other words, Deep Space Nine during the occupation. And who was in charge of Terok Nor 8 years ago? Gul Dukat, who bolts out of the room in shame. And Garak nods in knowing approval. The custody battle is over, and where is Rugal going? To Cardassia with Padar. Even though he stated multiple times he wants to go home to Bajor, wants nothing to do with Cardassians, and there's absolutely no evidence that his adoptive parents abused him. But hey, maybe Padar will use his influence to help bring other war orphans home, right?
No. Yes, we'll see. Remember what...
Oh, I see how it is. And it's clear that Rugal doesn't want to go with his father, and this really is an awful resolution. We close on Julian and Garak having some tea, and Garak ends the episode with my most often quoted line when it comes to my famous Picard is Wesley Crusher's father theory.
Just notice the details. They're scattered like crumbs all over this table we regularly share.
And that was Cardassians, an excellent episode of political intrigue, though with an extremely frustrating ending. I get it, everyone involved in this situation is a victim. Rugal was used as a political football, and Padar's political career was put in jeopardy via basically kidnapping his son. But Praka did nothing wrong, and he got his kid taken away from him. I know Rugal is Padar's biological son, and Padar has a right to want his son back, but I feel like a lot needed to be done before sending Rugal to Cardassia. Heck, is this even what's best for him? Is he even going to be able to adjust to living on Cardassia? He clearly doesn't want to be there and wants to go home to Bajor. Do Praka and his wife even have visitation rights? They raised and cared for Rugal for most of his life. Heck, what about poor Mrs. Praka? Her husband and son left on a trip, and her son got taken away. Honestly, I would have liked to have seen what Sisko's logic was behind this, because I think this decision will ultimately end up causing more heartache and pain in the long run. In the end, it's an imperfect solution to a tough problem, and Star Trek episodes occasionally end on those moments. Not everything works out for the best, but strangely enough, it doesn't ruin the episode. Cardassians is still a great episode, with the expansion of the Cardassians, a bit of a political mystery, and Garak's all-knowing expressions. Definitely a must-watch episode if you're new to DS9, and I think it deserves its spot in my top 10 DS9 episodes list.
You carry this everywhere with you, do you?
A simple tailoring tool. You'd be surprised how often someone needs their pants let out.
So what do you think of the DS9 episode Cardassians? Do you love it? Do you hate it? How do you think Rugal's custody battle should have ended? Should he have stayed on Bajor with his adoptive parents, or was sending him home to Cardassia the right call? Or is there a middle ground so everyone is happy? And what are some of your favorite Cardassian episodes in Star Trek? Please, leave comments below and discuss. As always, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Treknalysis. If you like what you see, why not give my video a like and subscribe to my channel? Tell your friends! Until next time...
You never mentioned you were friends.